I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am here, I am here, I am here. I know who you are in truth. I know what you are in truth. I know how you serve in truth. You are here, you are here, you are here. We know who we are in truth. We know what we are in truth. We know how we serve in truth. We are free. We are free. We are free.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Vital Aesthetic Podcast. I'm your host, James Freeman, also known as Bagheera the Man. Our guest today is a teacher, coach, and prolific writer with over 40 books, right? 40 books?
I think that's true.
Published to date in more than 500 videos on his YouTube channel. Joey Lott has shared extensive instruction for identifying and clearing limiting beliefs, releasing harmful habits, deep somatic healing, getting coherent about our true desires, and creating our lives in alignment with our authentic, unique purpose. On Joey's Substack lives a formidable mountain of essays on a broad palette of topics, from the misunderstood magic of natural sugars to the relatively simple structure of the cosmos, and how readily we may perceive our divine nature, our true divine nature, when we choose to. While many charlatans peddle elaborate rituals full of dense rhetoric and arduous effort, Joey proposes an approach of direct experience, focusing on the awareness of our divine self, not as a goal far off in the distance, but as firm, solid ground for us to begin and build our foundations upon. When I found Joey's work back in December of last year, he was on the cusp of an explosion in popularity, and I watched his YouTube subscriber count double and then triple. And now it's just shy of 4 times what it was when I first saw one of his videos, titled "Your Superpower to Banish Stress and Have Laser Focus to Attain All You Truly Desire." How could I not click on a video with that title? So aside from myself, there is no other individual that I can call to mind whose work has yielded more benefit in my life than you, Joey Lott. And I am immensely grateful to welcome you to the Vital Aesthetic. So thank you for being here. I wonder if you'd like to start by telling us a little bit about what you do and briefly summarize how you made your way from where you were to where you are now.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be here, and thank you for that introduction, which was I want to meet me now after hearing that. That's very wonderful. And I think you did a better job than I would do of describing what I do, I think. But so my description of what I do will pale in comparison, but I basically think about it in terms of I suffered a lot, and I learned a lot, through that process of suffering and releasing that suffering. And then I guess in that process, made a contract to share everything that I can with others so that they can also help themselves. I'm not able to hear you for some reason now.
I hit the mute button to silence myself while you were talking, and then I forgot to hit it. Did you write out this contract and sign it?
No.
Okay. It was an internal contract.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Well, what was the other part of the question?
Did you write out the contract and sign it?
No, but the original question that I was supposed to be answering.
Oh, just tell us about how you got to where you were to where you are, and what you do.
Oh, okay. Well, um, that's kind of a long story, I guess. Gosh. I mean, I it depends how far you want to go back. I
Rock bottom and maybe a little bit before that.
Yeah, well, rock bottom's hard to describe. I mean, I would say I was kind of hanging out in the territory of rock bottom for at least uh about 10 years, close to 10 years.
As one
So that's
often does.
Yeah, so that was a pretty long phase and a lot went on during that time. But I mean, just the synopsis of that was tremendous amounts of anxiety and a lot of reactivity to that anxiety. So I was, I guess early on in that process, I was somewhat hopeful that I was going to be able to find a solution. And was trying a lot of things to solve that problem or what I perceived as the problem. And then as none of those things were working and my experience was getting worse, I became increasingly desperate, and which I think is probably not that uncommon. Um, and then towards the end of that phase, I was voluntarily homeless. I was not homeless because I didn't have any money. I was homeless because I didn't know what else to do. I had left a otherwise basically fairly thriving career behind because I just couldn't hold my stuff together anymore. And I was I was just that desperately trying to find anything that might help. And I didn't really. I would say that what really helped me in the end was when I got very sick, um, because I had been running from my problem for a long time. So I had in those 10 years, I moved a lot of times. I don't even know how many times, because I kept thinking that there was some problem with where I was living, thought that where I was living was contributing to my anxiety, and that I could possibly find some perfect place that would not be problematic. Uh, and in that process, it was just a messy process. And as long as I was able to continue trying to avoid and run away, then things were going to continue to get worse. But I didn't know that. And so it was really when I got very sick and I, in some ways, literally couldn't move, not just move from one housing situation to another, but almost physically couldn't move, that I finally had to take a look and see what was really going on. And that was, I would say, when things started to actually shift. So I had attained a lot of knowledge in that intervening time, but I couldn't make use of any of that knowledge. And that knowledge only became accessible to me after I was willing to actually, or really in this case, more like forced to just be with myself instead of trying to find answers. That was when I would say that things actually started to change for the better.
Yeah, you had exhausted all of your distractions and other options.
Yes. And again, a lot of that turned out to, there was a lot of good information in that, what I had accumulated over the years, but I could not make use of it at that time. It's only in retrospect that I've been able to make use of it.
So then, what was the turning point? Like what realization turned things around for you? Like what was the threshold?
Um, well, at that time had I was together with my now wife, and we had just had our first child, and and as I said, I was very sick at that time, so I um, realized I was not things were not getting better, and despite all of my efforts, so it was uh, the situation was that I had lost a tremendous amount of weight. I was um, exhausted, not surprisingly, because I had lost so much weight. It was not intentional. I had not was not in any way attempting to lose weight. I was actually trying not to lose weight, but I just couldn't stop losing weight. And I couldn't eat much, which is contributing to losing weight, obviously. And things were just going very badly. And all the things that I had previously done trying to feel better, I couldn't do because I was so exhausted. So I had previously done a lot of meditation and energy work and things like that, but I was in a state where I didn't have enough energy to be able to do any of that stuff. It actually requires a certain amount of energy to just sit and focus, but I couldn't do it. And um, so I had a realization in that was it was a dead end. I mean, I was heading for it was death basically. I mean, there was not that was not going anywhere good, and it was going very rapidly in that direction. And so that was the point at which I realized that I had to do something different if I was like a totally radically different approach if I was going to expect different results. And I wasn't able to figure out on my own what that different approach would be because I didn't know. I mean, that's the problem when we have a blind spot is we're genuinely blind to it. So in retrospect, it's fairly obvious because, as I said, I was running away. I was trying to solve the problem, but I was never actually examining what that was. I was just trying to get away from it. And so, but I didn't know that. I really didn't know. I had no idea at all. So, and I've told this story before, but I'll tell it here again, which is that it was in that during that time that I feel very clearly that I was guided. Uh, there were some synchronicities that caused A Course in Miracles to show up in my life, and I started reading A Course in Miracles, which I've never finished, by the way, but it had a very strong impact on me, and uh, I felt a presence through that guided me to it showed me what my blind spot was. I was not able to find that on my own, but that presence showed me what that blind spot was and guided me to do the right things that would help me in order to start to heal from all that.
Which was
Well,
what were the right things?
um, so started out with EFT. I was practicing EFT at that time.
What's that?
So EFT is the tapping thing.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what were the changes? I mean, just like really simply, like what were the fundamental changes that began to take place as you engaged in that practice?
Well, so I, like I said, it was turning around from trying to avoid to actually accepting. And because that, for me, that was, I would say that was really the essence of what happened there was that I had been trying to solve a problem. I was convinced I had a problem, thought I had lots of big problems. And I could have come up with lots of different names to describe those problems, but the names, the ideas about the problems weren't didn't actually give me any direct experience or knowledge of the problem, right? I was just labeling it and running. It's like saying, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid of the boogeyman. There's no boogeyman. So the boogeyman is just a story and a label that's applied to some, it's a real phenomenon that's going on, but it's not actually called the boogeyman. It's a subjective phenomenon that's happening there. And so similarly, I was running from my own version of the boogeyman, but I had not actually taken time to find out what it really was. So that process started to turn that, and I started to notice what was really happening within me, which was fundamentally just an avoidance. I mean, it's really just a long history of avoidance. I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with this. Well, I'll avoid it. And so a lot of stuff builds up in that. If the if the strategy of life is to avoid what's not comfortable or familiar or wanted is to avoid, then that stuff just builds up in the energetically, psychically, however you want to understand it. That stuff is just there remaining because it's never addressed, it's never seen, it's never integrated, it's never allowed. And so that just remains there. And over a lot of time, that's a tremendous amount of baggage of unprocessed material.
And so would you say that the reason that uh that it wasn't being sorted out, that it wasn't being addressed, is because you hadn't made it conscious? You because it sounds like what you're talking about, the root cause was limiting beliefs,
Well, you
or
could certainly understand it
the
as,
way that you were framing things.
yeah, I mean, so you can call it by many names. So I would say in a more general sense, it's impressions. I mean, just to use a more general term. So an impression meaning just some content that's been impressed in the psyche or the body or whatever that hasn't been addressed or resolved or integrated. And that could certainly take the form of a belief, right? A belief is one such impression. It's one way of understanding such an impression, but you could also frame it in other ways. So I just don't want to limit it exclusively to beliefs. Beliefs are one frame of reference to address that by, but it's not the only way.
Sure. These impressions and the the way that those were informing your experience, your perception of yourself and your life,
Yeah.
and the fact that that was unconscious, that you weren't aware of, like acknowledging how those impressions were informing your experience.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And then so once you did begin to examine how those impressions, like what those impressions were and
Yeah.
how they were informing your experience, that's when things started to really turn around for you.
Correct.
It's
Yeah.
like, rather than like distract yourself and run away from them. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
well, what is going on here actually?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And I would also specifically say that it was about accepting, because um, what I've noticed is that there are seem to be lots of ways of in a way making conscious that those impressions or that content that does not necessarily resolve it or integrate it. You could approach that by uh, generating a kind of autobiography where all that stuff is brought to light, but it could be still viewed in a way where this material is unacceptable and problematic and it's pathological and needs to somehow be addressed. And there are some that's a way that I've noticed that some people deal with that stuff, right? They can say, okay, now I know what all my problems are. I know what all the stuff that's there. I know, every last little detail, and I've got it all cataloged. Uh, but it's all a pathology that we need to get rid of somehow, needs to be purged or something. And I view that does not seem to actually work very well. Instead, what I have found, certainly in my own experience, but also in working with other people, I see that acceptance and integration seems to work much better.
So I guess I'm I'm not comprehending uh like what that looks like. Um
Mm,
yeah, because it I hear what you're saying, that uh making these impressions conscious by examining them, but doing so in a way where the narrative is still informed by distortion,
mhm.
like that's not actually helpful. But so
Right.
what does the alternative look like
Yeah.
pragmatically?
Right. So just to give some specific concrete examples that might make this a little bit more understandable. So, for example, um, I had, and so for most of us, not I guess not everybody, but for most of us, our basic there are certain basic patterns that get played out over and over and over, and those will usually get established in very early childhood. Um, so the example that I'm going to give is not one that started out in very early childhood, although maybe there were the roots of it. But there's one example that I can give, which was that when I was, I don't know the exact age, maybe around age 10-ish, I became aware of myself, as is, I think, common at that age to start to have more bodily awareness, like self-consciousness of the body. And I started to feel very uncomfortable about my body. I was very critical of certain features of my body, and I felt that there was something wrong and shameful with my body. And this became very strong for me. It was a very dominant experience that uh, played an enormous role in pretty much every minute of my life from that moment onward. Uh, Not always consciously, but certainly it was just always there in the background, and oftentimes very consciously producing a lot of anxiety. So I didn't want anybody to see my chest. And so that played out in terms of lots of things, like going swimming. That was hugely stressful. Uh, Playing sports, oftentimes as a young boy, would involve, like shirts and skins. That was enormously stressful. So all these kinds of things were going on, and then of course that played into my how I started to then, not that long after, started to have sexual feelings and attraction toward young to girls at that time. Um, and So then that started to be very complicated in that whole thing, lots of insecurity. And so this was just playing out in my life in a really big way. And so uh, I could, when I was finally willing to address that, because I had had lots of layers of over the years, lots and lots of layers of coping mechanisms trying to avoid that. Okay, so I tried to avoid that by trying to uh, use diet, trying to use exercise in order to try and modify my body so that I could feel more acceptable. And those became huge fixations in my life. So those became then and also dysfunction in and of themselves. And so then that sort of became a layer on top of that initial discomfort and anxiety that I was experiencing in regard to my body. And then and then there were other compensatory things that I took on. I wouldn't have thought of them as that, but in order to compensate, so I wasn't going to be the guy who was going to, have this uh, physique that I could use as a way of feeling good about myself. So I had other strategies. I could rely on intellectual things in order to try and help myself feel good. So lots of layers were built on top of that initial kind of sense of lack or inadequacy. So then, when I finally became aware of what was going on, and I could just go through all that and catalog it. One approach would be just go catalog all of it and come up with names for all of the dysfunctions. I'm sure there are diagnoses for all those things, and I could do that. And then um, that doesn't seem to do much good because then I'm still saying these are dysfunctions, these are pathologies, and I need to somehow get rid of them in order to be okay, which is very difficult to do. So the approach that I was guided to was just to accept it, just to say, okay, this is just what is. Okay, there's these feelings exist, these thoughts exist, these experiences exist. All of this stuff exists. All of the resistance to it exists. It all exists. And just accept it. So that was sort of the formulation, as I understood it, of EFT, as it was originally presented, which was just the formulation was at that time, there was an affirmation that you would use or a certain structure for the affirmation, which was even though fill in the blank, even though whatever this thing is that I don't like. So even though I believe I'm a loser, as an example, I completely love and accept myself. So it's just like it's an acceptance of whatever the thing is, even though I'm a loser, even though I'm ugly, even though I'm unlovable, even though nobody can like me, whatever the beliefs are, right? Even though this, that, or the other, I completely love and accept myself. So you're not trying to reverse it. You're not trying to say, I'm afraid that I'm ugly and unlovable. Therefore, I'm gonna layer on top of that. I'm attractive and lovable. It's just to say, I acknowledge that this exists. I have this conditioning. I have this impression in which I believe or perceive that I am ugly and unlovable. So even though I'm ugly and unlovable, I love and accept myself.
Okay, so how it sounds like what you're saying is that um, this acknowledgement process is allowing you to examine what the thing is without developing meaning,
Mhm.
uh, like subjective meaning from that. But then, and that seems helpful, but then how does that facilitate resolving the thing? Because you said that it's not necessarily effective to try and remove the thing. But if the thing is still informing your experience, like regardless of the meaning that you've attached to it, if it's still impacting your experience in a way that is painful, then how does acknowledging it without the meaning help to resolve the pain?
Um, well, so uh, so obviously I formulate things. I don't when I'm presenting um, ideas to people now. I usually don't just suggest just accept it all because I did try that for many years. That was kind of how I started. I for because I've been sharing stuff for more than 10 years now. And that was mostly the approach that I took for a while, for many years. And what I found, and I thought, this is it. This is brilliant. This will help everybody. And um, what I found is that it didn't really seem to move the needle very much for a lot of people. I mean, there were definitely some cases where people got very significant results in their lives from that, but it was not. It was a small minority, and so I had, you know, took that feedback, went back to the drawing board, did a revision, and realized, okay, that's not sufficient in and of itself for most people in order to actually get the real results. Um, so I do think that that's the essence of it, but in order to really arrive at that and find and really get the real value of it, it needs to be usually presented in a different way. So even though that was for me, that was that was my fundamental realization, I guess. To arrive at that usually seems to require a different approach for most people. So, um, but your question is, uh, how does that help to have that acceptance? How does that actually help to produce the desired change? Is that the question?
Yeah.
And so the reason I'm giving this long-winded answer, I guess, is to say that I think it does. I think it's essential, but but it just needs to be presented in this other way for people to actually get those results. And so the way that I present it now is number one, to have clarity about what you actually want in life, because uh, like I did say, when I big part of the problem was that I was just trying to avoid. And when being stuck in that mode of trying to avoid, which is basically fear, then that seems like the right answer. It seems like, well, I just need to get rid of this thing. I need to avoid this thing being whatever you want to call it. So you have a different label depending on how you perceive it. But I would have called it anxiety. Actually, I don't know what I would have called it, but in retrospect, I'll call it anxiety. So I could have said, I just need to get rid of the anxiety. My life will be okay when I get rid of the anxiety. Because that formulation kind of made sense at that time. I could look and see that, well, I've got a career, I'm making a lot of money, I've got some friends. If only I didn't have the anxiety, everything would be okay. So I just need to get rid of the anxiety. But the problem was actually it. I mean, first of all, I can't get rid of the anxiety because, as I already said, the anxiety is like the boogeyman. It doesn't actually exist. It's just a label given to something that hasn't actually been seen for what it is. So getting rid of anxiety turns out to be basically impossible. Uh, and then the other problem is that actually, in retrospect, it's pretty clear that I wasn't very happy. And so I didn't really know what I wanted. I thought that I kind of thought that things were basically okay, but it was really just because I was mostly focused on just trying to get rid of the anxiety. So I really didn't take any time to get clear on what I really wanted. I was just, I was more or less just a slave to my conditioning and to the conditioning of society. I wasn't really, I wasn't really being true to myself. I was just doing what I thought I had to do to get by and to compensate for all of my insecurities. So getting clear on what a person actually wants seems to be a very helpful way to get started, because it starts to turn things around. Instead of trying to avoid what you don't want, you can actually turn and look and get clear on what you do want.
Yeah, yeah, it's like your energy and your attention, uh the effort that you're putting in, um rather than have that be focused entirely on dismantling what you're framing as a problem, rather just focusing on what you want actually in um like you're clear on what you don't want, but rather than like fighting that, trying to tear it down, looking at what do I actually want and putting your time and your attention and your energy into
Yeah,
that and creating that.
correct. Yeah,
Because like if you spend all your time like trying to fight this thing or destroy this thing, you're not actually putting any time and attention and energy into creating what you want. So it's like even if you
yeah,
dismantle the problem, if you
yeah,
haven't put your energy, your attention into what you actually want,
yeah.
then you're just left with this like empty garden. It's like there's no weeds,
Right.
but there's
Yeah,
also none of the fruits and vegetables that you actually want.
true. Yeah. And it doesn't even usually work out that well because well, I didn't really understand this law of attention at that time very well. But I did recognize how it was playing out because I had these experiences that would happen very often where I would notice that uh, when I was trying to avoid something, I was trying to avoid some basically I was trying to avoid the triggers for the bad feelings that I didn't want. And when I would try to avoid those things, those triggers, then invariably I would get more triggers as a result.
This is the whack-a-mole thing you talk about. That like
Yeah.
if you're standing at the whack-a-mole game and you're like, this is what I've got to do, is I've got to destroy these problems as they come
Yeah.
up, or avoid these triggers, but
Yeah.
they just keep coming up. And so the solution is actually like, okay, I don't really actually want to play whack-a-mole. I I want to
Right.
play a
Yeah. I
different,
mean,
yeah.
so to give just to give a specific example where I experienced this very acutely. So my uh I guess you could say my mental health was not very good. I was not actually crazy because my I knew that my thoughts were crazy thoughts. I didn't actually believe them, but I just felt so stressed that I was trying to manage everything so that I could avoid the unwanted thoughts mostly. And so I had a lot of triggers, thoughts that were triggers, and outer symbols that were triggers. And so there were certain key ones that were really triggering for me: Coca-Cola, Walmart, McDonald's. These were some of the big ones. They were extremely triggering for me. And I was, as I say, voluntarily homeless. And I mean, homeless in the sense that I didn't have a house or an apartment that I was living in. I did have a van, and I was driving around everywhere in the US in this van looking for my paradise where I could be free. And and I had so much anxiety. I had these rules for myself that said if I see or think about anything related to Walmart, Coca-Cola, or McDonald's, then I can't eat for I don't remember how long, a certain amount of time. and I certainly can't touch any food that I want to eat for a certain amount of time. So I was I was driving around looking for places that I could acquire food that I thought would be safe to eat. And my rules were that I couldn't see or think about McDonald's, Coca-Cola, or Walmart anytime around near to the time when I was going to the place when I'm going to get the food. Well, this is very difficult. If you
Yeah.
imagine in the US, that's, and especially, I was like in middle America. I mean, forget about it. It's like Walmart, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's are everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. But I just remember I remember these distinct experiences that really made um, this law really apparent to me, which is whatever you put your attention on, it grows, so you get more of it. So I was desperately trying to avoid these things. And I remember I would go this one day, I found a food store and I like, safe, I can do this. And I went in, and that place, when I went into it, I think, they had music playing on the speakers in the store. And it was playing that song that, da 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 da. Sugar, sugar, dun 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 dun.
Yep.
Honey, honey. And I was like, sugar, sugar. Oh my God, I got to get out of here. Oh, because I didn't tell you, sugar, sugar was another one of the triggers. Sorry. So I was like, I got to get out of here. So I got out of there, and I said, I'll find another place. So I was driving, trying to find another place. And on the way to that other place, I remember that I was passed by like three Walmart trucks. And I was freaking out. I was like, Walmart trucks? Oh no, no, I can't. Now I've got to wait for a certain amount of time before I can go get food. And I finally got to the next place, and the rules were met. And I went in there, and that place, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like something happened there that was even up the ante from what had happened previously. So it was like the first place was just a song that's saying sugar, sugar. And then I see these three Walmart trucks. And of course, this is all meaningless, right? I mean, this is all stupid, meaningless stuff that I was just making up in my mind. I realize that. But the point here is just that uh, it started out as something very, I mean, it's all trivial and meaningless. But for me, even that was fairly trivial, just a song, just a lyric of a song. And then it progressed. Each time it got more increasingly more in my face. It was like the next place is like right next to the McDonald's, and there's McDonald's trash all over the place. And it was just like each time was just more in my face. So if I'm trying to avoid something, it's not going to go away. It will increase.
Yeah, the whole what you resist persists thing.
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like the threshold for you then was uh acknowledging what these impressions were, and uh not getting caught up in the meanings that you had created out of those things and just accepting them, but then also getting clear on what you want so that you
Yeah.
could
I mean,
focus your attention on that.
yeah. Well, to be fair, getting clear. So getting clear on what I want didn't um, really didn't happen for quite a long time afterward. So I guess I should say, I think one of the downfalls of acceptance only is that it does not tend to. I know there are those who would disagree with this because it doesn't match with their experience, but at least for me, and I've observed this in others, acceptance only does not tend to make one particularly successful in life.
Yeah, because like if you just accept everything as it is, then like what's the point in focusing on anything in particular?
Yeah, I mean, so I was able to be very happy. I learned to be very happy and peaceful. I learned to not have any problems.
Well, that's valuable.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was enormously valuable. So I'm not that's what I'm saying. To me, that's the foundation. I think that that's the foundation of everything, because it's possible to achieve great outer success and yet be miserable. And that's not actually too great, you know. And so that's why when I had that realization, and it became my experience that it was possible for me to have peace no matter what, always. That was a that was a total shift, and I knew that that was a real thing. I knew that that was what I had actually been looking for
And
forever,
so
because I
so that became a foundation for you, and you took a while to immerse yourself in that before even really thinking about what you really want.
yeah, because what happened was that I had remember I said that I when I was in the thick of it, you asked me about rock bottom, and I said that lasted more than a decade. During that time, I was really looking. In fact, I guess in retrospect, it lasted a lot longer than that. But I was looking for answers that whole time, and I said that I acquired a lot of good information and experience, but I just couldn't apply it because I hadn't yet. We could call it the master key. I had not yet gained the master key. For me, the master key was unconditional peace. So when I gained that master key, then all the other stuff became accessible to me. But for a while, I didn't care to make use of it because I didn't really value it. Because before I had that information, it didn't do me any good, as far as I knew. Right. So I knew all of the. I mean, I knew a lot of this. I knew a lot of the manifestation stuff because I'd worked with it when I was looking for answers. But it, in and of itself, it didn't give me what I was looking for. In fact, in a lot of ways, it just made things worse. It's like adding more fuel to the fire. Um, so I had a lot of, and a lot of things. I studied a lot of things. I immersed myself in a lot of things. I had a lot of experiences. And as I say, a lot of that is useful information, but I couldn't make use of it then. Then I'll call it the master key. I got this master key, and I realized this is what I've really been looking for. I can have this peace all the time, no matter what. There's no condition that can deny this peace. So, um, for years, uh, let's see, for about 6 years, um, that was that was how I was operating, and I was able to access unconditional peace anytime, and I was able to be happy anytime. And however, I was also and am married with children, and um, it's difficult to be. There's kind of a conflict there, of it's like it's great that I'm able to be happy and peaceful unconditionally all the time, but I also have attachment to my family, and my family's wanting stuff, and I'm kind of just hanging out like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. I'm fine. But it started to create this conflict. It started to create this unease within me. And so then there was this realization, which is, oh, okay, so there's a disconnect here. Like, yeah, I can experience unconditional peace and happiness anytime, but that's only inwardly. And outwardly, there's still a lot that needs to be cleaned up. Like, there's a lot that has not been addressed. I'm just not addressing this stuff because I'm not motivated to address it. But then I had this realization. I guess I could say I started to have the motivation to address it. I started to realize that if I don't address it, then I won't be completely satisfied. They'll, if I like fast forward to the end of the life, will there be a regret? Yeah, there'll be a regret. The regret will be, I kind of, people talk about spiritual bypassing. I guess it would be like, yeah, I kind of bypassed. I came into this life because I wanted the human experience. And that's a total experience. It's to have a sense of self-mastery of the total experience. And if I got to the end of the life and I had just punted the whole time and was like, yeah, whatever, I'm fine, there would be a regret. And so I needed to clean that up. So it was at that point that I would say that there was this dawning realization that getting clarity on what I want is important.
So it sounds like the broad solution to everybody's problems is to get clear about what they want, but perhaps before that, to develop a foundation of awareness of the true self, which you could just call like unconditional okayness would be like an expression of that.
Yeah. But I have, so I used to think that that was true, but now I think of it a little differently. So I look at it as, so I think everybody's life path is a little bit different. There are certain commonalities, right? Like we're all human, so there's certain commonalities that we all have. In fact, there's an enormous amount of commonality. Like the differences turn out to be pretty small in comparison. We focus a lot on the differences, but the similarities are more, the commonality is much greater than the differences. But nonetheless, um, the sequence of things for a person will vary depending on their personal path, their personal, where they are and what they need in a given moment. So I don't think it's universally true that everybody will benefit from first uh, having a recognition of their fundamental okayness. That might be too much to ask. It might not actually be what's most helpful for somebody in a
So
given moment.
it might be, and I wonder if this has been your experience working with people, that it's can be more efficient and effective to start with clarity about what you want.
Oftentimes, that's what I find. It does, like I say, it does depend, and so I do my best just to meet people where they're at. And in order to know that, I do my best just to let people tell me where they're at because I don't know. So I just try to be to listen and see and be responsive to where a person is telling me that they're at and what they're saying they need and want. And sometimes people will say in their own way, maybe not with these exact words, but they'll be communicating that they really want the glimpse of their unconditional okayness. Great. So we'll start there. And but a lot of the time people are really saying, I don't know what I want and I'm hurting. Okay, well, so let's get clarity on what you want because that's gonna be a really important first step.
And so the like once you're clear on what you want
Mhm.
and have had a glimpse of your true nature, then the only thing that gets in the way of experiencing that is interference.
Correct. Yeah. And I would yes. So uh the yes. And by the way, it can be that um that interference or that, so that's another word for the conditioning or the impressions, that can be an obstacle to getting clarity on what you want. So this is not that uncommon. So sometimes people, when presented with this possibility of you might be able to get clarity on what you want, they become very overwhelmed. They're like, I have no idea what I want. I don't even know where to begin with what I want. I can't begin to imagine the possibility of having clarity on what I want. It's like seems totally impossible for them. Well, that's a pretty to me, that seems like a pretty clear indication that there are a lot of there's interference or impressions that are in the way of that. And usually then I find that um and this is where working with that in terms of in the framework of limiting beliefs seems to be very effective. So let's just take a look and see what are the limiting beliefs that are really in the way of that. Because if a person believes, and usually these beliefs are not at a they're not really at an intellectual level. At an intellectual, rational adult level, oftentimes we won't believe that we have these beliefs because you might think, well, hey, I'm pretty successful, and so therefore I know that I'm capable. Like I can do plenty of things, so I'm capable. I couldn't possibly believe I'm not capable. But at a subconscious level, it's very possible to have the belief I'm not capable. So so if you have a belief I'm not capable, it's entirely possible that that belief could interfere with you even getting clarity on what you want. Because if you're just like, I'm not capable, well, okay, then why are you going to bother trying to figure out what you want? Why are you going to bother even allowing yourself to open to or imagine what you want if you're not capable? You probably won't.
Yeah.
So like that can be a big problem in that process.
Okay. So it might be that it's not necessary. Okay. So getting clear about what you want is not necessarily the solution for somebody who has like such significant interference that they don't even feel capable of investigating that. And so the solution for those people is to get a glimpse of who they are so that they can, well, to give them what's the word, to empower them or give them a glimpse into their capacity to clear the limiting beliefs. Because if like you're if you've got this mountain of interference,
mm-hmm.
and you are framing your self identity within that framework, then you might be interfering with the possibility of clearing those out.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that definitely is likely. But just for the sake of clarity, it doesn't mean that I would always necessarily start there with a person, because sometimes, oftentimes actually, it's reasonable just to start with a belief. So sometimes a person will just present with a belief. They don't necessarily even know they're presenting that belief, but it'll just show up, right? It's like they might just, in the course of a conversation, they might say 5 times in the first 5 minutes, I'm unworthy.
Like that's the
And
subtext of what they're saying. Like even if they don't say that
they
explicitly.
might literally say those words.
Yeah.
It will often be disguised. They'll literally say the words, but it won't be so direct. It won't be, hey, I've realized I feel unworthy, and that's my problem, and I want to take care of that. It won't be like that. They'll just
But
be
it's like
having a
implicit.
conversation. Well, yeah, but it will also, as I say, be explicit, but they don't. So they'll be telling a story about something, and then just it will slip into that story that something like, uh, and I felt so unworthy. Just like, when last week I was, I had this, I met with my boyfriend, and, for dinner, and my boyfriend, we had this conflict, and then, he didn't, we had a thing over the check, and I just felt so unworthy. It will just, these things will come in like that. So the person's not even, they're not really even conscious that they're having that belief, but it will come up, like I say, many times in the course of that short conversation. So it becomes really clear that's a theme. So that belief, I'm unworthy, is clearly active for that person. it's affecting their life. They've just told me that. And so then it's pretty obvious that clearing that belief will be very helpful.
Yeah, and so you wouldn't even necessarily have to guide them. It the the direct experience of one's true nature is not a requirement for clearing the limiting beliefs. Like you might just uh, identify one and guide them into identifying that themselves and
Yeah.
helping them clear it.
Yeah.
And that
So
might be like the starting point for them beginning to sort stuff out.
yeah, exactly. I mean, so obviously, I mean, you have some familiarity, I think, with um, one of the one of my courses in which I outline a particular step-by-step process, and out of necessity, when outlining a process, especially if it's for a general audience, then there has to be, step one, step two, step three kind of thing. And so I have sometimes formulated things in that way, and because it's reasonable, it can give good results, and so that's great, but on a but on a when working one-on-one with a person, I'm not seeing a formula. I'm seeing that person, and whatever, I'm just listening to that person and seeing that person and doing my best to be responsive to that person. So if that person is telling me, even though not consciously, if they're saying, this is my biggest hurdle, this is the thing that I'm struggling with the most, then I'm not going to say, okay, well, let's do something else first. I'm going to say, okay, well,
Sure.
this is the thing that's hurting you. Let's deal with that so that you're not hurting in that way. And then, of course, because like I said, we have a lot of commonality, so I think it's true for all people that these three components that we've been addressing, which is getting clarity on what you want, having a recognition of yourself as an unconditional being, independent of all of the conditioning, and clearing all that interference. Those three components are broadly applicable and valuable for all people.
But the order in which one approaches those can vary.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, you've essentially like summarized, I think, the thrust of what you teach with that. Excellent. So we're at about an hour now, and so I wonder what what you're open to as far as time. We talked about 2 hours. If you're open to it, we could push past that. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I at least another, let's say, 45 minutes would be fine.
okay. Um, so if that's the case, then I break my podcast into two segments. The free section is a lot of what we've been doing, like talking about
Mhm.
different concepts, and then the second part, the premium segment, is focused on practicum. Um,
Sure.
and so if you want to just do like 45 minutes more, then we'll go ahead and wrap up the free segment. So for the people that are just listening to the free segment, would you tell people where they can find your work?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can find my website at joeylott.com, and you can, a lot of my content is published on YouTube. So that's a good place to find it. You can find, just search for Joey Lott on YouTube, and you'll probably come up with some of my stuff.
Excellent. Do you have any current offerings that you'd like to plug?
Uh, well, only to say that if somebody is feels attracted to what I offer, then I welcome them to, uh, number one, I'm currently at least offering free introductory coaching calls, so people could sign up for that. and that's available on my website at joeylott.com/intro. And if people sign up for my newsletter on my website, then they can basically that's the best way just to receive information. So they'll get notifications or they'll get an email with information about how to join the live public meetings that I offer every Monday by Zoom. And then any other offers that I have will be sent out to my mailing list, so they receive those that way.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Joey.
Yeah.
So to everyone that is listening to this for free, I appreciate you. Your attention is the best support I could ask for. So thank you. And for those of you who want to check out the premium segment of the show, where we talk about techniques and practices, that will be available on Patreon within the next few days. And there's a link to that in the show notes. Take care, everyone. Blessings.
I am delighted to be here with you. I know you feel my love. That's all I really gotta say. Though I know our minds hunger in language, so I'll find some words anyway. Before you were born, you chose this journey to forget who you are. And through these trials, learning, remembering, child of the stars. And all along we've been here with you, inside of your heart. Take respite in knowing that your search ends now, not soon. You need not forget anymore. This is how you tune. Oh, hey, yo, oh, hey, yo. Oh, hey, yo, oh, hey, yo. Oh, hey, yo, oh, hey, Who you are is eternal, though you've known yourself through form. These are expressions made by your divine impressions, powerful, present, and warm. Take respite in knowing that your search ends now, not soon. You need not forget anymore. I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am here, I am here, I am here. I know who you are in truth. I know what you are in truth. I know how you serve in truth. You are here, you are here, you are here. We know who we are in truth. We know what we are in truth. We know how we serve in truth. We are free. We are free. We are free.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Joey, excellent stuff, brother. I sincerely appreciate the energy and the knowledge that you bring to the table. I feel like philosophy, the concepts that we've been exploring, there's so much nourishment there. But when I was younger and struggling, hearing talks like this was not just medicinal and therapeutic, but truly healing to me. Knots that I had formed in my body and psyche and wasn't consciously aware of would spontaneously untie themselves as I heard people explain how those knots were formed to begin with.
Yeah.
So to the listeners, I hope you are receiving the benefits of this conversation. The peace, love, and prosperity that you seek is present within you and is available for you to express and receive if you allow it. Grateful to serve with you in this way, Joey. Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom with me and everyone listening.
Glad to be here.
So the premium segment of the show is centered and focused on practicum. My intention is to present listeners with tools that they can leverage to develop coherence, which I define coherence as knowing who you truly are and what you truly desire. With coherence, we are empowered to refine our approach to our lives, first in orientation and then in our daily habits and practices. So the things that we talked about in the first hour are a wellspring from which the listeners may drink, and if they're inclined and sincere, quickly develop coherence. And so now, with your help, I'd like to give them a robust set of viable tools for developing coherence so that they can more efficiently and effectively, consciously and intentionally create their life in accordance with their true soul desires. You up for that?
Sounds good.
So I know you've got your own complete set of teachings that you offer in your course, Manifesting Truth, available at joeylott.com/manifesting-truth. And there's a link to that in the show notes, along with the other links that you mentioned. It's an incredible course. It's absolutely incredible. Simple, direct, very powerful. I'm just over halfway through it, and it has had a profound impact on my life, significantly enhanced the quality of my experience in every aspect. I can't say enough good stuff about it. And I would recommend it to anyone who is looking to reclaim their innate cosmic power and remember who they truly are. However, in the interest of brevity, I have some questions that, if you're inclined to answer them, I'm confident will yield an ample tool set for the audience to begin experiencing positive results. And if they want to enhance their approach, I am happy to direct them to your website.
Good.
So my question is this. Say someone is experiencing great difficulty in meeting their essential needs, like stable housing, financial health, holistic health, feeling safe and well on a basic survival level. What can they do today, right now, to remedy their struggle for survival? Let's say you had 20 minutes to give them the best practical advice you can to help them create the stability they are so desperately seeking, what would you say to them?
Well, it's probably the same thing that I would say to most people about most things, which would be well, so in this particular case, it's would be obvious that there are a lot of limiting beliefs that are interfering, because the the I mean, if a person's in that kind of situation, I suppose that so there are other things that might be going, and but the number one thing that a person could do for themselves, starting right away, would be to begin to identify and clear the limiting beliefs. And one, so these two of these tools that I often recommend. One is clearing the limiting beliefs, and the other one is to focus on what you really want. These two things work synergistically. So I will say, if a person is aware of the limiting beliefs that they have, so let me also just say, so if I'm talking with somebody, here we're not, this is sort of this hypothetical situation, and I'm not actually talking to a person about their situation, right? If I was actually talking to a person about their situation, I would be able to identify the limiting beliefs that are most prominent for them, and I would be able to help them clear some of those limiting beliefs right then and there. So in the space of 20 minutes, I have confidence that I could help them identify and clear at least one core limiting belief, and that would start to make a difference for them. And through that process, I could help. And by the way, that means permanently. That belief is gone forever. Uh, and through that process, if the person was so inclined, they could also learn the the simple tool in order to help them do that for themselves. Now, 20 minutes realistically is not a lot of time. So I certainly could not guarantee that the person would then be successful with that. But I do have confidence that, at least with most people, in 20 minutes, I could help them identify and clear one core limiting belief. And depending on the person, I mean, obviously it depends on their presence of mind and things like that. Most people would be able to learn a simple, effective technique that would allow them to then clear their own limiting beliefs. So that would be the main thing I would recommend. Now, because this is not exactly that situation, and this is me presenting some suggestions in a general sense for your audience.
Well, I was thinking that we could potentially role play. I could pretend to be this person.
Oh, well, okay, we could do that. But I assume also we would want to give some maybe general recommendations to your audience. So
Yeah.
yeah, so which order do you want to do that in?
You can go ahead and start with that.
Okay, so the general recommendation that I would give would be, number one, if you can clearly identify limiting beliefs that you have, if you're aware of them, then just write them down. And one simple test for this is to say it out loud. So you could start by saying something like, I'm a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And if you say, I'm a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, most likely, hopefully, that is going to generate kind of like what it just did for you, James, a little bit of a smile or some laughter, or at the very least, a sense of neutrality. And that's because hopefully that you will perceive that as nonsense, because you probably don't have the belief that you're a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But if you
Not
say
anymore.
something, right, yeah, glad that you were able to clear that one up. That was probably very problematic for you in your life.
It was. It's a
But
sticky
when,
situation.
indeed, but if a person has a belief such as I'm not good enough, then when they say that belief out loud, it will not have the same feeling of nonsense. There will be some kind of charge, a feeling to it, that's not a feeling of nonsense. And so that is the indication that they have that belief. So as you might recall, I said earlier that a person might not agree with their beliefs at a rational level, but that doesn't mean they don't have the belief. So the test for the belief is to say it out loud and notice the feeling. So if you say out loud, I'm not good enough, and it's not totally neutral or sort of laughable, then that means you have that belief. Now, you could have that belief to stronger or lesser degrees, but of course the thing is, if you have a belief, you have the belief. It's either you have it or you don't.
Yeah, and the
So
emotional charge is like the indication.
exactly, yeah. But if it's not, if you don't hold it really strongly, it's still you have it and it's causing you problems, but it might not be causing you huge problems in your life. Versus one that you have a strong emotional charge with is probably causing you very significant problems in your life, particularly if it gets triggered often. And so it's often helpful to clear those that have the strongest charge first.
Yeah, I've heard you talk about how limiting beliefs can cluster together. And so, like,
Mhm.
even if you clear the ones that don't have as much charge, if those are arising from the core limiting belief, then it would be more effective to focus on that one and clear that one out.
Yeah, yeah. So, so if you're aware, like I'm saying, if a person is aware of the limiting beliefs that they have, even if they might not agree with that on an intellectual level, but if you can see how that plays out in your life, or if you catch yourself having like this inner critic that will say these things to you, then write those things down. Do the field test by saying it out loud. Just notice the feeling. And so then that's a list of beliefs that you can work with to clear, and that will be very helpful. If that's not something that's coming, that you're not getting clarity on any of that right away, then what I would recommend is to identify what you want in your life. And so this is a process in and of itself. Sometimes it's clear to people, they know what they want. They're like, hey, I just want more money. You know, if I just had more money, I'd things would be better in my life. Great. So for better or for worse, you know, maybe that's ultimately the core desire or not. But if that's clear to you that I just want more money right now, you can start there and you just identify, I want the money. So you state that in the affirmative presently, like have the money. And you you can, I won't go into all the details. We'll just say, you can just say, I have the money. Okay. So I have X amount of money now. It's in my bank account. I feel wonderful and fantastic. Imagine that as true. And when you do that, your mind will start to offer up the limiting beliefs that are blocking you from that. Right. So if you presently don't have the money and you're stressing about that, and then you play with imagining that you do have the money.
So maybe like prefixing that with in my imagination, I have
Well, that's,
plenty of money.
yeah, that that's obviously helpful to do. Um, but however one does it, at the very least, if you start to imagine that that is true for you, or you would just imagine that scenario where you have the money, your mind will start to offer up the limiting beliefs, because it will start to say, you can't have that money because you're stupid. You can't have that money because you don't know anything. You can't have that money because nobody would hire you. You can't have that money because fill in the blank. These limiting beliefs. So that's one way to elicit the limiting beliefs. So that's why I say the methods work synergistically, because the clarity on what you want will help to elicit the limiting beliefs. So you can ideally you want to use a combination of these two methods. One just being identify, just notice, what does your inner critic say when you're stressed out, when things are not going your way? What does your inner critic say? It's probably saying all kinds of things like, I'm a loser, I'm stupid, I'm no good, I'm unlovable, I'm ugly, whatever. So you want to notice what those things are, write them down. And then if you're really struggling to come up with that, then I recommend get a focus of something that you do want. Imagine that you have that now, and then notice what your mind comes up with in terms of why you can't, it says you can't have that. Those are some limiting beliefs, write them down. So this will give you a list of limiting beliefs that you can then start to clear.
So I can see how those two things feed into each other, because your capacity to clear the limiting beliefs will be expanded by your clarity about what you want. And maybe that just starts with, a vague idea of what you want. But as you imagine that and you clear the limiting beliefs, then you gain more clarity on what you want, which empowers you to more effectively clear the limiting beliefs. It's like
Yes.
yeah.
And
Okay.
so then of course what's needed next is a method to clear the beliefs.
Yeah, so that's why I was hoping to do the role play thing. And we could just do
Sure.
that really briefly, just because that way people have like an example of how that might work.
Yeah. So I'd like to just offer people the steps first so that they can
Yeah, totally.
aware what the steps are. So this is a method. So I've worked with many different methods over the years for clearing beliefs. And this method that I'm proposing now is the most effective, quickest, easiest method that I have yet encountered. It gives quick, permanent results. And this is based on the Lefko method, which is Lefkoe. And so the steps for it are, I should say, this is inspired by the Lefko method. I'm not necessarily representing the Lefko method per se, but this is based on my understanding of the Lefko method or my own experience with it. So the first thing is to actually let me take a step back and say, in the simplest form, it can often work just to do two steps, which is number one, to ask yourself, have you ever seen the belief? And the second question is, have you ever felt the belief? And my understanding of what's actually going on here, when a person actually goes through this process successfully, with just these two steps, what's happening is that they're giving a directive to their nervous system saying, go through all of the memories, all of the impressions that are associated with this belief and find out if the meaning that was assigned ever actually existed in anything that was ever seen. And your nervous system can do this very rapidly. So once you get very skilled at it or are confident with it, this can happen in a matter of seconds, actually. But initially, it can sometimes take like 15, 20, even 30 minutes. But uh, but basically, the process is that your nervous system is then just looking through, and it's just differentiating. It's saying, okay, this is the meaning that I thought it was actually in what I saw, but what did I actually see? And it will quickly notice that you never saw that meaning. You just saw things, and you assign the meaning. And then the second question, have you ever felt that belief? Same basic thing. You're giving a directive to your nervous system. So your nervous system goes through all of those events that it thought what you felt meant that thing. And it will quickly start to determine that you actually only felt the feelings and the feelings never meant anything. You just assigned that meaning. So it can often happen that with just these two steps, the belief will be cleared permanently, which I know might seem difficult to believe, but it's true. Uh, so those two steps, are, as I say, are often enough. Uh, it can be helpful though, and this is the way that Morty Lefko would present it. Would be the first step would actually be to ask the person to imagine or remember the events that likely led to the formation of the belief. And in some cases, I found that this is necessary. It's not always necessary, which is why I say that many times it can be skipped, but it's a simple enough step. It's usually worth doing anyway. So you can either remember or imagine the events that likely led you to form the belief. With most beliefs, not, I don't know about most, with all the core identity beliefs, this almost all of them, it would have been in early childhood in relationship with parents. So usually start there. Just assume it's early childhood in relationship with parents. So like, your parents, they might have been great parents, they might have been terrible parents, whatever, but despite that, uh, you could form any number of beliefs in relationship with them. And it could be usually commonplace sorts of things. Like, so you might have parents who are basically, they're like decent parents. They're not like abusive or anything, but they might be busy as parents often are. And the child wants the attention of the parent repeatedly. This might happen day after day after day. And the parents are not giving the attention that the child wants. And so the child then might form the belief, I'm not important. And so that belief is formed from those common everyday occurrences in life. And I'm pointing this out just because sometimes, not often, usually people are able to identify the events that led to the formation of the belief pretty rapidly, but sometimes people are kind of puzzled over it. They're like, well, how could I form that belief? So it's helpful just to realize a lot of the time it's just these sort of commonplace things like your parents were busy, your parents didn't like your behavior, right? Because a lot of time kids do things that parents don't like. Parents get annoyed, parents get angry, parents get impatient, and the parents will give the child a look or shout at the child or something like that. Or in more, sometimes the parent will actually slap the kid or something like that. And the kid will then form a belief, um, I'm not good enough, or I'm not important, or I'm unworthy, or I'm stupid, or I'm unlovable, or there's something wrong with me, and or any number of other beliefs. And it will just be in response to these kinds of events. Now, of course, we can form beliefs in response to any number of events, and people undergo lots of variety of experiences in their lives. So I'm not saying that it's limited to those kinds of things, but I'm just giving some examples. So once that's done, then ask the question, have you ever seen the belief? Investigate to notice what's been seen, differentiate so that it's clear that you never actually saw the belief. Then, have you ever felt the belief? Same thing, go through, notice what's been felt, differentiate to notice that you never felt the belief. You just felt the sensations and you applied the meaning to it. At that point, usually, let's say 95+% of the time, all that's necessary is to retest just by saying the belief out loud. And it will, like I say, about 95% of the time, the belief is gone. And you'll know it's gone because there's no longer any charge when it's stated out loud. So it will be like saying, I'm a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's like, nope, nothing there. Whereas initially you might cringe if you say, I'm not good enough. And there'll be this feeling in you that you like, whatever that is, a sinking feeling, a tense feeling, a crying feeling, all these kinds of feelings could be there. It will vary from person to person, obviously. And then when you've cleared it, you can say, I'm not good enough. And it's like, no, nothing there, nothing at all. So that's the point at which it's cleared. If there's still a charge, it's not yet cleared. If that happens, then there's some other steps that can be necessary in order to clear it. And for our purposes here, I don't think it's worth going into those details.
Well, I mean, this is pretty much the tail end of the show, and it sounds like that might be valuable to people if you're able to just briefly mention what those additional steps might be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
That,
think
yeah.
my thought is that it would be good because you were proposing we could demo it.
Yeah, but I think that like you've really illustrated it in such a way that I don't think that it's really necessary, because also framing it as uh, like a client and coach situation, that's not necessarily that's not necessary for somebody to sort this stuff out and
True.
experience the
Yeah.
results. Like they can do it themselves, and I think that they could do that with the process that you just explained.
I yes, I agree, but I also think if that's the case, it would be helpful. I would like to just point out a few other things then,
Yeah.
and just maybe sort of demo it myself as a
No, we
self
can
application.
we can role play, or yeah, that's even
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
yes, because I think that's how people are going to be working with it. So, let's say I've identified the belief that so I have the belief, I'm not good enough. This is a very common belief, by the way. It's very rare that a person does not have this belief unless they've released it. So I would test that out. I'd say, I'm not good enough. And I just notice, okay, what does that feel like? And if I'm not clear whether I have that or not, if I'm feeling something, I could just say out loud, I'm a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or I'm a bicycle, I'm Big Bird, or something. And just notice what that feels like in contrast. And then again, say, I'm not good enough. So if there's any charge with I'm not good enough, I have that belief. And that's my baseline, just noticing what that's like. Because once I've cleared it, I want to notice that I don't have that charge anymore. So then I'll ask myself, what are the events that might have led me to form this belief? And with a belief like this, it's a I am belief. I am not good enough is an identity belief that was formed in early childhood, pretty much universally. So in relationship with parents. So I would look to the events of my early childhood. And even if I don't remember anything from the first 5 or 6 years of my life, I could at least speculate based on what I know about my parents, because I know my parents. And so I could imagine, how might my parents have responded to me when I was a young child and they didn't like my behavior? Oh, well, that's pretty easy, right? I can imagine how my parents would have responded to me and the expressions on their faces, or what they might have said, or how they might have said it. And then I have right there, well, oh, that's how I formed I'm not good enough. So there I was doing whatever I was doing, just as a young kid, and my parents reacted to that in a way that was got my attention in a negative way. And then I didn't know what to do with that. And I just had this feeling. And then I thought, oh, this must mean I'm not good enough. Of course, it wasn't a conscious calculation, but it happened nonetheless. So once I have some clarity about how I would have formed that belief, and again, this could really just be speculation. So often people will have specific memories, and that's great. And that can be very helpful. But other times people don't have memories. And if you don't have the specific memories, it's enough just to speculate, just as I said, based on what you know of your parents and how young children act. So then I'll ask myself, okay, have I ever seen I'm not good enough? And of course, different people are going to have different responses to this. I find that somewhat rarely a person will be really clear right away. No, I've never seen that. Obviously, I've never seen that. I've seen lots of things, but I never saw I'm not good enough. I just saw expressions and actions and things like that. But it never meant I'm not good enough. So that could happen. If that happens, then great. Just be sure, just ask yourself, just take a look. What have I seen? Have I ever actually seen I'm not good enough? If not, great, you can move on. But more often than not, a person will say, yeah, I've seen I'm not good enough. And so you just kind of review, well, what did you actually see in those moments? Well, I saw that I made a big mess, and I shouldn't have made a big mess, and my mom was really upset. I saw that most of the kids in my class passed the test, but I failed the test, and my teacher stood me up in the front of the class and humiliated me. So there's proof I'm not good enough. And I saw that I was always the last kid to get picked for the teams. So that's proof I'm not good enough. I saw it in these things. It was there. Great. So now you know what you saw. So then just notice that the things that you can see, you just like look around where you are and notice, is there anything that you can see that does not have a shape, a color, and a location? And you should recognize, no, there's nothing I can see that does not have a shape, color, and location. Okay, so in the same way that you can see all those things that you can see that have a shape, color, and location, can you, or in this case, can I see I'm not good enough? Have I ever seen that? And it should be clear, no, I never saw that. So the idea here is just to differentiate and realize, okay, I saw things, I saw the expressions, I saw those actions, I saw that the other kids were picked first, I saw all these things, I saw those things, but I never actually saw I'm not good enough. So I'm not good enough was always actually a meaning that I assigned to the things that I saw. It never existed intrinsically in any of those things. So there should be a felt shift at this point. It's like, oh, okay, get it. Then the next question is, have I ever felt I'm not good enough? So same basic process here. So have I ever felt I'm not good enough? And I find almost everybody will believe they've felt the belief. It's very rare that somebody does not believe they felt the belief. So, of course, if you're really clear you've never felt the belief, you can move on. But I'll imagine that I have felt the belief. So I'll say, yeah, I've definitely felt I'm not good enough. Like all those times I when I was not good enough, I felt I was not good enough. I had the feeling of I'm not good enough. Totally obvious. I felt I'm not good enough. So then just want to notice, well, what did I actually feel? I felt sensations in my body. That's what the actual feeling is. Okay, did those sensations ever actually mean I'm not good enough? Uh, well, if you really look, you'll have to realize, no, they never meant that. I will sometimes prompt this by saying, imagine that you train other people to have this feeling, but you haven't told them what the feeling means. How many of them will be able to tell you what it means just by having the feeling? And almost everybody is able to recognize from that, well, none of those people, or very few of those people, would think it means what I think it means. Why? Well, because the feeling doesn't mean that. The feeling is just a feeling. It doesn't mean anything. So this is the idea, is you want to actually clearly recognize in this step that I've had these feelings. They were real feelings that I had. I could feel them in my body. They had a location in my body. They had qualities. It might have been in my chest or in my throat or in my head or in my stomach. Might have been a tension. It might have been moving upward or downward, sinking. Might have been heavy. It might have been all these kinds of things, whatever it was. And that was real. I felt it, but it never actually meant I'm not good enough. It was just a feeling. And I assigned that meaning to it. So same thing here. There should be a kind of a felt shift, like something clicks and you realize, oh, yeah, I never actually felt that. I'm not good enough. I just felt feelings and I thought those feelings meant I'm not good. So that should actually be something that registers at a felt level. When that happens, then it's possible just to say it out loud as a test. So I'm not good enough. And if it's cleared, it should just be like saying I'm a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It should register as nonsense. It's like, no, no, not at all. Nothing there. If there's still anything, there's still got a reaction, then you still have that belief, at least a little bit. Hasn't totally cleared. That happens every once in a while. Like I said, maybe 5% of the time. If that happens, then one way to deal with this is to find out if there's any part of you that is hesitant to let go of this belief. So sometimes that will be the case. Because what happens is that you form the belief when you were younger, obviously, and that younger part of you felt it needed this belief in order to survive. So it was doing a good thing. It was a very intelligent thing to have done at that time, given those circumstances. But then this part of you has taken on this burden of, I need to have this in order to stay safe. So it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm always recognizing I'm not good enough, because if I don't, then I might get myself into trouble. And that might be really disastrous, right? Like if I don't remind myself I'm not good enough, then I might do something that's going to call attention to how I'm not good enough. And then people are going to humiliate me, or people will reject me, or people will do all these terrible things to me, and I'm going to hurt even more. So I have to remember I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. So this part might be hesitant to let go of that belief because it feels like it needs that belief to stay safe. So if that happens, then you'll just ask, is there any part of me that's hesitant to let go of the belief? And if there is, it will usually volunteer and say, yeah, me, I don't want to let go of the belief. And then you just can communicate with that part and just help that part to feel safe, to know that, it's like, thank you for doing your job. You did a very intelligent thing. And by the way, I think you didn't know, but I've grown up and I've learned some things, and I actually don't need to keep that belief now. And if you negotiate with and help this part in the right way, in a very sensitive way, it will usually be relieved. It's like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to do this anymore. It's like for the last 40 years, I've been holding on to this belief just because I've been feeling like I'm not safe. And I had this duty to keep myself safe, but I don't have to do that anymore. It's a huge relief. So that's one thing that can sometimes be a delicate situation depending on what the situation is with that part. So sometimes that part needs sometimes that part will will not be trusting, right? Like that part might be so hurt uh, because it's been rejected so many times, feels so worthless. Like nobody ever cares about me. Nobody's ever here for me. Nobody will ever be here for me. Nobody, you know, everybody is just concerned about themselves. So that part might need some, you might have to keep revisiting that part for a few days without an agenda. If you come to that part and you say, you got to let go of the belief, what are you doing? Let go of it already. That just plays into that sense that the part has that I'm not safe, nobody cares about me, everybody's just got their own agenda. So you have to be sensitive with it and say, look, I got it. It makes perfect sense. You don't feel safe because nobody ever cared about you. But I want you to know that I do care about you. And it will probably say, you know, screw you, you don't care about me either. But then you say, that's fine. I get it. And I love you. And I'll come back and visit you tomorrow. And it might say, yeah, whatever. Nobody ever comes back. Say, I hear you. I love you. I'll come back tomorrow. You come back tomorrow. You just got to keep coming back to demonstrate that you're serious and develop that trust. And that will help. Um, but once that part is feels safe and knows that that part does not need to hold on to that belief anymore, then you can again test by saying it out loud. I'm not good enough. Most of the time, then the charge will be cleared. So there are some other edge cases, but that hits most of it. So if a person does those things, they'll be able to clear on their own better than 95% of their limiting beliefs.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the meaning that we attach to things is really the core of interference. That's really what interference is. Like
Correct.
the and it sounds like the way that gains so much power and influence in our experience is the joining of sensation and the meaning. Like
Correct.
once, yeah, like we entrain these meanings into our body and psyche and reinforce them by merging them or joining them with sensations,
Correct. Yeah.
and then that
And
gets like repeated over and over.
yeah. And that's happening, by the way. That pretty much describes everything.
Well, and that
So
isn't like an
even
inherently bad
even like the
thing.
level of
That's not an
it's
inherently
no,
bad
it's not
thing.
an inherently bad. No,
Because well,
it's not
because
bad.
like if the meaning that you're assigning is um clear and true, we'll say true, like as close as language can approximate, truth. um and it's empowering and helpful and supports your awareness of your true nature and your creative process, then that seems helpful to have that entrainment process. I mean, that's what nature's doing, like this entrainment process is part of
True.
nature. So like
Yeah.
if there isn't any distortion, then that's helpful because then we get stronger and stronger in uh you know whatever like orientation we have that's actually helpful. And it's just that
Yes.
when there's distortion, that's when it becomes problematic, because then the power of that grows because of this entrainment process.
True. But it's also always contextual, and that's the important thing. So, and the context is always changing. So it's not what's true in a certain context will not be true in another context. And since the context is changing, it's not always going to be true. And that's so a lot of these beliefs, even though they might be limiting now, they might have been very intelligent and appropriate at an earlier time. Sometimes the limiting beliefs were never useful because they could be generalizations that were made about something that really turned out not to be very useful at all. But a lot of the time, they were intelligent meanings to have assigned in that context, right? So again, if I'm not good enough, if every time that you behaved in a certain way, which you equated with good enough, you were humiliated or hit, then it's very intelligent to determine I'm not good enough, because that's going to prevent you from behaving in those ways, which will prevent you from getting hit or humiliated. So it was in the context, we could say even truthful. But uh when the context changes, it's no longer useful. And so, if that context was you being 5 years old and you're now 35, then the context is obviously very different. And so continuing to have that belief is not helpful. And so any belief turns out to have limitations because it's limited to its context. And so it becomes tricky. Yes, forming beliefs consciously that are supportive and helpful of one's aims is obviously a useful thing to do, but ultimately it's wise to hold them lightly and to understand that they are contextual and that the context will change. And so just to remember, it's a belief, not actually the truth.
Yeah, yeah, because I've heard you say that while that we ultimately don't need beliefs, but you've also said that you yourself have created and hold, it sounds lightly, some empowering beliefs.
Correct. Yeah.
But you're saying that like it's important to keep that to be aware that that belief is being used like as a concession, as a tool. It's not objective truth. It's just it's contextual. It works specifically to function within this context.
Yeah.
Well, to me, like this really clearly illustrates how powerful we are, because by applying and impressing our body and psyche with meaning, we're able to orient ourselves in very specific ways. And so that can be helpful. It's like scaffolding though, because like once we have the orientation, at a certain point, we don't need the scaffolding anymore. Like once the foundation's built, we don't need the stuff that we used to hold it up, because now it's established. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's it would be helpful to take everything that you've been talking about and essentially like keep it in your tool set, because if you establish empowering beliefs that help you to create what you want in your life, it's not necessarily helpful to maintain that orientation forever, because maybe you create what you want and then you get to a point where you're like, well, this isn't really what I want anymore, and actually what I want is going to require a different orientation, and it's
Absolutely.
easier to let go because you've been holding it lightly the whole time.
Yes, right, exactly. I mean, give an example that it's for most of us, it's functionally useful to have a healthy body. And so forming the beliefs that support that is helpful so long as you have a body. But there will come a time when you won't have a body, or at least you won't have this body. And so at that time, maintaining those particular beliefs that were necessary or helpful for having this healthy body become unnecessary and therefore burdensome.
Yeah, and we can sort of get out ahead of it by keeping it in that context the whole time.
Yes.
Well, I I can attest to the efficacy of these practices, because I've been following your work for a while, and these are things that I've been hearing you talk about for a while, and integrating and putting into practice in my own life. And once I started to get um, a holistic comprehension of everything that we've talked about, everything that you teach, like the general thrust of it anyway, and started to see how these processes and these parts fit together. But when I grasped that, like, oh, okay, it's all of these things together, and here's how they're working synergistically. Within days of that, dramatic changes started happening in my life, which I'd like to unpack in another episode. But essentially, like, I narrowed down my desires and I started imagining them. I ran into blocks, which I identified as limiting beliefs. And as I cleared them, so that I was able to more effectively imagine what I want and thereby gain more clarity about what I want, my circumstances began to shift very, very rapidly, like immediately. That day, I immediately started feeling better. So I can, like, what you're saying is true. At least it has been in my experience. And I imagine for most of the people that you work with.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that once I began to investigate these limiting beliefs that I was holding, it was like pulling a thread. And so like each limiting belief that I cleared would lead to the next. And so like as I got through that process and realized that I was um, sifting through a lot of the same sort of stuff, I began to intuitively like push past like ideas and find like what the core limiting belief was, and then just focus on that. And the more that I cleared these out, the more easily and thoroughly I could imagine what I really want. And so these limiting beliefs had literally been blocking my imagination for like most of my life, like literally like preventing me from even considering what I want, even thinking about what I want.
Yes.
And so now, like having cleared those out, it's really easy for me to focus on what I want and imagine it and just readily allow my imagination to flow in the, you know, this experience, this internal experience of what I want. And now that I've been doing that for a little while, it's been expressing outwardly in my life. Like since I started telling the truth about what I want and getting out of my own way, I'm allowing the life I truly desire to unfold with ease and grace. And I'm finally allowing myself to receive that.
Yes.
So I'm convinced that what you're teaching people is true.
Yes. And if you think about it, so like if something is possible for anybody, then it's possible for you. I mean, I guess we could find some kind of exceptions to that, like you know, it's maybe if you're 5'2" and there's somebody who's 7'5", it might not be possible for you to reach the thing on the top shelf, and it is possible for that person to reach the thing on the top shelf without a stool or something. But you know, accepting that, um, there and that's not even a real block. Actually, I mean, even that can be overcome. But in general, the kinds of things where we block ourselves, we say, you know, I want this, I want that, but I can't because of all the reasons we think we can't. If it's possible for somebody else, it's possible for you. So why are you not doing it? Only because you believe you can't.
Yeah, I mean that was a root limiting belief for me, was that I wanted things and I believed that I had to do things that I didn't want to get what I want, or that I had to like put in a bunch of work to get what I want. But there's so many examples of people that have what I want, or you know, something approximating that, and they didn't have to do a whole bunch of stuff that they didn't want to do. They talk about it. They're like, oh yeah, I just did what I wanted and got what I wanted. So it's like, why is that not possible for me? Oh, because I'm believing that it's not possible for me.
Exactly.
I'm gonna stop doing that.
I know, and it sounds, I know for a lot of people initially that sounds too good to be true. It's like, wait, no, there has to be another reason why I've been stuck all these years. It can't just be because I've been blocking myself, because I've been telling myself I can't. It has to be some other reason. It has to be out there. It has to be something in the culture or in the government or in my parents or somewhere out there. There's in the system. It's keeping me down. No, it's just because you've been believing you can't. And when you when you clear that stuff, suddenly you demonstrate that you can.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to is this really pervasive pathology that like struggle is a requirement, and that
Mhm.
like uh significant complexity is a requirement, that
Yeah.
there has to be like this really elaborate process, and this is, you know, with anything like success, spiritual growth, like self-realization,
Mhm.
even just like developing a skill. There's this idea that's really really prevalent like all over the place, that like, oh well, if you want that thing, you got to do all this shit together.
Yeah.
but but
Well,
that itself is a limiting belief. Go ahead.
yeah, one of the things that I really um has been very eye-opening for me, and that I really try to communicate with people about, but I don't think I do effectively yet, is the power of intention. Because uh and I'm saying this in response to what you were just describing. So if I think that in order to achieve whatever my desired outcome is, I have to do all of these difficult and complex things, then by virtue of my intention, which is that in order to do that thing, I have to do very complex and difficult things, then therefore that's true for me. But when I understand how powerful my intention is, I can use that same power in order to create that desired outcome effortlessly, simply by declaring it. It's just that people don't experience the truth of that, because we all do this. We have an intention. I have $1 million. You have that intention, right? And instantly it's so, at least at the level of thought. And if you can imagine it, it's instantly also true at the level of image. If you can feel the truth of it, it's also instantly manifest there. But then what happens is, in the next split second, we turn around and we interfere with that, because we say, oh, no, I don't. I can't. I'm not good enough. I have to work harder in order to get it. I don't know enough yet. I haven't earned it yet.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the interference, it doesn't just block the manifestation of what we want. It um what's the word, we conflate the limiting belief with our intention. So it's like, I want this, and because of this limiting belief,
Yeah,
I have to do all this other stuff to get it, or there are
sure.
these huge obstacles to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of looking at it. I was looking at it in a slightly different way, but it's just, your way is very good. They're basically the same thing in a way. I was looking at it as just that it's a separate intention. So I have an intention for I have $1 million, and then there's another intention, which is I don't have $1 million because I'm not good enough. I don't have $1 million because I can't. I don't have $1 million because I'm not smart enough. I don't have $1 million because I wasn't born wealthy. I don't have $1 million because I'm not like those people that have $1 million. And
Yeah.
those, yeah. And
Yeah,
and
so
so
that's
we
like,
create our reality with that intention. Whatever the present intention is our reality. And it just so happens that for most of us, we can't sustain the the intention that we really want, because it gets followed up by conflicting intention, right? So I say I have $1 million. We can't sustain that because it's followed up by a conflicting intention, says I don't have $1 million because I'm not good enough. And that becomes our reality.
yeah, I think this I know we're getting close to time to wrap up here. But I think that what you're speaking to here is something that I've heard you talk about quite a bit, which is how important it is to focus on our internal experience rather than invest so much meaning into our outward experience, because like, you know, the physical world, this outward experience is an effect of the causal realm,
Yes. Yeah.
if you want to put it that way. So essentially, like, you if you're looking out there, you're just seeing what what is based on what has been, and then the meaning that you assign to that is not necessarily aligned with what you're trying to create. But what you're trying to create is already, once you're coherent about it. And so if you're focusing on that internally, like that is your experience. And
Yes.
so if you're focused on your internal experience and you're coherent about what you want, then that is. And even though there's this, external experience going on, if you focus on that and you decide that that's what is, then you're
Yep.
no longer focusing on the thing that you want.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing you're seeing out there is it's just a time delay of what you were creating, right? I mean, so it's like if you see a plane, I don't know if you ever noticed this effect. If you see an airplane um in the sky, sometimes you'll see the plane over there, but you're hearing the sound over there because there's a time delay. And it's a bit like that. It's like, so internally you have this intention, I have $1 million, and then you look out there, and out there you're seeing what you were intending yesterday, which is I don't have $1 million. And you say, oh gee, I don't have $1 million. Now you're intending I don't have $1 million, thereby tomorrow when you look out there you also don't have $1 million. But if you just are willing to sustain, I have $1 million, I have $1 million, I have $1 million, and really feel and know that all the way through and accept it completely without negating it, then it has to show up out there. It's just there's a time delay.
Yeah, and it will show up out there if you continue to focus on it to completion.
Correct.
Because like if you're focusing on it in here and you're clear about it, but then you're looking out there and being like, but no, it isn't.
Right.
Then it won't,
Right.
because now
Yes.
your attention has shifted from what you wanted to this other thing.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why I really want to express and have people understand the power of intention, because if you really just understood that much, when you really have that understanding, and you claim that power fully and accept it, then the rest of the stuff becomes unnecessary. You actually are always creating with your intention. So if you really just can stay with your desired intention, as you say, to completion, which is just how long is that? How forever, because it's what you want. Stay with it, right?
Right.
As long as you want something, stay with that. Why are you gonna go somewhere else? Like that's foolish. So stay with the thing as long as you want it. Don't give up on it. And then as long as you do that, then that is your experience, and it will remain your experience as long as you stay with it. So
Yeah, and
just
as
having an understanding is all that's really necessary.
yeah, I mean, if you're staying focused on what you want internally, then and you're not getting distracted by external circumstances, then your external circumstances will naturally begin to reflect what
Yes.
you're focusing on internally. So like
Yeah.
the actions, that might be required to facilitate that will arise organically if you're not getting distracted.
Correct. Yeah. But then again, with all that said, in practice, for most of us, because we haven't cultivated that faith and that power of staying with it all the way through, these other tool sets are very valuable because they can help to clear out that stuff. Like, clearing the limiting beliefs turns out to be, it's not fundamentally necessary, but it's very useful to us because it's like training wheels. We need that. Otherwise, we'll just keep falling back into the same old trap and just stay stuck. So, um, but through along that way, I guess I'm just encouraging people to just start to have awareness of the power of intention. So, clear the beliefs, give your attention to what you desire. Clear your beliefs, give your attention to what you desire. And then as you're doing that, just start to notice how powerful your intention is, so that over time you can really just start to have faith in that. And you just know, wow, if I really just stay with this internally and just have faith and know that it is true, then it is true. And I don't need to do anything else or go anywhere else, give my attention to anything else, because I'm already experiencing that completion and fulfillment right now here.
Yeah, and I think before any like outward circumstances are appear, we can um validate the validity of this to ourselves, because of the somatic experience. Because
Sure.
yeah, like when we clear a limiting belief, there's immediate relief in the body. And
Yes.
that to me is evidence. It's like, oh, okay, something happened. There is a
Mhm.
change here, and it feels positive.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it stands to reason that that would continue into our outward experience. Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff. It's it's been absolutely wonderful, brother.
Good. I've enjoyed it too.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you are and all that you do. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's it for this one, folks. Thank you for being. Thank you for your presence. Blessings.